Where is President Biden? Questions abound online among public figures and news folks, asking questions about why the president's schedule has been cleared for the duration of the week until further notice. Updates are expected, but everyone's wondering why we've only heard from his physician and a very cryptic and raspy voiced phone call into his campaign headquarters yesterday to congratulate his former running mate, who is now running at the top of the presidential ticket because he has stepped down. Also, the circumstances surrounding his letter that is not on any letterhead that we've seen before. People are even questioning the quality of the signature and whether or not it matches up with other signatures we've seen from this public figure who happens to be the president of the United States. So all of these things are taken in the context of a political party that is trying to give the appearance of coalescing around a nominee and purporting and projecting unity. And I think there's something else interesting about that. There was a huge announcement yesterday that Kamala Harris had raised $84 million in 24 hours, an attempt to best fundraising that has been seen for the Trump administration, or I should say the Trump campaign. Well, what's interesting about that is it's actually money that was being held. So some of the money was from small donors, about 1.6 million. People who'd previously donated to Act Blue but hadn't in this election cycle. And then the rest of the money was the large donors who'd previously announced they were withholding $90 million. So they really haven't gotten all of the 90 million back. And that is a statement against Kamala Harris's candidacy as president, because they should have a fundraising haul that exceeds 90 million, since 90 million was held in abeyance to force Biden out of the run. So you have NBC's Steve Kornacki. He's at it again. He has a fantastic breakdown about Kamala Harris's prospects. Will she fare any better than Biden against President Trump in head-to-head matchups? There's polling data on that. Take a look.
Take a look at this. This is the average of all the polls you're talking about there since the debate that tested Kamala Harris against Donald Trump. Trump 47%, Harris 46%. In this same set of polls, when it was Joe Biden, 47% for Trump and 45% for Biden. So the Democratic number on average goes up from 45 to 46. But I think it underscores for Democrats, they view this move as something that's going to improve their chances in the general election. That is based more on hope than it is on the numbers right now, because you go another level deep in this and you've got the favorable, unfavorable, basic impression people have of these candidates here. For Joe Biden, look, these numbers have looked like this for a long time. Very, very bad numbers. 36 favorable, 57 unfavorable. Again, this in average of polls over the last month. So what's the difference with Kamala Harris? Again, not much of a difference, from 36 favorable to 38, 57 unfavorable down to 52, but that's still a majority of voters saying they have an unfavorable impression of Kamala Harris. Throw up Donald Trump's numbers there for comparison. He's at 41 favorable, 55 unfavorable. All three of these figures with majorities of voters saying they are unfavorably impressed by them. So again, from the Democratic standpoint here, they think Harris being reintroduced as a presidential candidate, getting a different look, they think these numbers can improve for her, both in the favorables and in the horse race against Trump. But we don't know. As you say, she has not really been tested. Her name never actually got to a primary ballot in 2020. She dropped out a couple months before that.
Oh, wow. So the reality sets in. And remember, this is not, this isn't Breitbart. It's not Real America's Voice or SNC channel, where we're conservatives and we're open in our viewpoints. This is NBC. He's talking about the reality of them literally disenfranchising over 14 million of their own voters to place Kamala in the catbird seat. And you have to wonder, and of course, we used to say, oh, conspiracy theory, oh, tinfoil hat. You have to wonder, did they plan this all along? Was it an attempt to prevent her from having to go through a brutal process of being primaried herself? Had Joe Biden announced a year and a half ago, I won't be seeking re-election, as I promised to voters when I was elected in the first place. I said I'd be a one-term president because of my age. And so the heir apparent is Kamala Harris, and then she would have stepped into that primary role. People would have seen her as the next presumptive nominee. You would have had people run against her in the primary, and she would have been subjected to debates. I'm talking about on the Democrat side. And then she would have eventually had to face off against President Trump. So instead of it being a Biden matchup, Biden and Trump going up in that first debate, it would have been Harris, which would have been an even larger disaster than what we saw with Biden having dementia and going up there and going up against Trump, who was not just cool and calm and collected, but viciously accurate in his criticisms of the performance of this presidential administration so far during their first term. So now here we are. We're looking at this and we have to really unpack this. How much of this did they plan? And what makes their voters think they won't do this again? Now, Democrat voters have been disenfranchised not once, but twice. Do you remember the debacle with Bernie Sanders? Bernie Sanders rides in, he's in the primary, he's a socialist. All of the young voters love him. He's saying ridiculous things, but that's nothing new. You started the Democrat voters off on a healthy mainstream diet of the words hope and change with the Obama administration. That's what they ran on for both of their terms. It was hope and change, a nebulous kind of unquantifiable idea. What is hope? What is change? Hoping what? Changing what? From what to what? Lots of questions abound were never answered. Post Obama administration, we see that there was a radical change in the way Americans view all things having to do with morality, and especially a degradation of the race relations between Americans, which had previous to the Obama administration been absolutely high. The polls showed that Americans had never felt more normalized in their race relations. This was right before President Obama was elected. Post Obama administration, 2 terms, you see race relations in the country at a tinderbox level, everything either on fire or catching fire at the moment. So let's look at this a little bit further. You have now 5 days, right? I believe this is day 6. We haven't seen him. Where is President Biden? Now, obviously, if he's sick with COVID, okay, he's not around. But normally you'll at least get a photograph, right? We would get a photograph of him wearing a mask or a photograph of him and Jill maybe sitting outside at one of his residences. We're getting nothing. Now there was this big conversation surrounding his event in Nevada, and there was an emergency evacuation type of a situation. He was supposed to go to a local hospital that was 2 miles away. The police were called in to cordon off the roads to make for a speedy trip from where he was having a rally in Nevada to where the hospital was. They changed their minds en route and instead went to Air Force One and really quickly got back to the East Coast where he could see his own physician. And so word on the street is that was treatment for a stroke. I've been reading about this all night. Everyone is reporting about the scrambling of the police and the fact that they needed to get him to a hospital. So that's reported news. The rest of it, we don't really have answers on. Now, replace the presidents. If this was President Trump and he'd been evacuated from any place due to a medical situation, do you understand that all news would have been shut down until we knew exactly what was going on? He would be required to tell the American people what was going on with his health. But with Biden, he's just disappeared for 5 days and dropped out of the presidential re-election contest. I can't believe this is where we are right now in this kind of hobo world where there's no real news, where Americans are just snowed under with nonsense and we don't have answers, and the president hasn't been seen in 5, almost 6 days. We're supposed to put up with that? I don't think so. We need answers. I would like there to be a return to normalcy. Also, up next, we have breaking news. Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle resigned her position after a vicious accountability hearing in Congress yesterday. I'll tell you more about that right after this.